Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our special guest, Congressman Mo Brooks. Also, the V-Team takes a look at mental health debacle. And does Kay Ivey have a secret plan for new prisons?
You'll be here overnight if you don't keep your mouth shut.
Wow, that's really cold. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
How's everybody doing?
Good, you're back.
I came home. I told you I would, like a straight
Did
up.
everyone have a happy 4th?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
happy 4th.
It's good.
Independence Day. We need more independence, and I need fewer days off. Those 3 days off almost killed me. I can't stand it.
Yeah, I know. You actually relaxed, for God's sake.
Relaxing is overrated. Mike Hubbard is one step closer to the Hoosgow, Beth. He's filed his appeal to the Court of Criminal Appeals. Now we have the state has answered in a 138-page brief, and it has got some good points, and then it's kind of dry in places. But that's the way appellate briefs are.
It's usually how it is. There's a lot of just procedural points you've got to hit going through. You've got to make sure you just answer it and say it and repeat it. I mean, it's probably terrible to read. I need to print out a copy and read it this week. But, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they rule on this, because I think they'll give them oral arguments just so they can say they did. But I don't see anything in Hubbard's appeal that was like, ooh, yeah, good point. Nope, didn't see anything.
I mean, Susan, it says that basically if Mike Hubbard's not guilty of these things, which he was found guilty on 12 counts of felony public corruption, if he's not guilty on these things, then the whole ethics laws are shams.
Yes, that's actually the word that was used on the first page of the document. They got it right out there in the beginning. They said, if he's not guilty of these crimes, then these ethics laws are just a sham. He blatantly took money to alter his position or to give his client benefit, et cetera, and several of them were just because he was Speaker of the House. He said, it says if he's not guilty, then you might as well get rid of the laws.
Jack, you know a lot of these people on the Court of Appeals, and then several of them are sort of going to be MIA due to either sickness or some else.
I think Mary Wyndham had to recuse because she accepted a contribution from Storm PAC, which was Mike Hubbard's political action committee where he gave to candidates. I don't know Beth Kellum's health situation, if she'll be back or not. So we may only have 3 judges unless there's some rule that you have to appoint other judges in their place, but I'm not sure about that.
I don't know.
But, we all live through it. They're asserting that there was prosecutorial misconduct, which was already ruled on during the trial. I don't think the judge made an error. So I think if you, and those of us who followed it and know Mike Hubbard, we think he's guilty, and I want to see justice served.
Well, and 12 jurors, good and true, found him guilty.
They did, and we sat through that entire trial and watched person after person testify against Mike Hubbard for committing the very crimes that he did. It's time for him to go to jail.
Yes, it is. And for 4 years without the possibility of parole, that's a good thing. We made a report last week, Josh Moon's report about Representative John Rogers said that he was offered a similar bribe, or at least he felt there was a similar bribe to that, which Oliver Robinson, Representative Robinson, has reached a plea agreement, Beth, to say that he did accept bribes and did work to stop the Superfund from happening in Birmingham. There's a lot of kickback on it. And by the end of the week, John Rogers said it never happened. Now, he told me and Susan that. He told Josh that. He told several other people
He told
that.
y'all that it did happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he told us it happened beforehand. And he told Josh it happened. He told other people it happened. But by the end of the week, Beth, he said none of it ever happened. He never met with Drummond. There was never a bribe, and Luther Strange was never in the room.
Right, and it would be easy to believe that John Rogers had been misheard, except for the fact that so many people heard the same thing. If 3 different people heard 3 different things come out of his mouth, I'd believe that with John Rogers. But, I mean, the thing, though, is that we've also heard rumors that other people were approached about the same deal. So it seems to me what was happening is they were shopping it around, trying to find somebody who would be willing to accept it, and that just makes it all the more plausible.
Well, I mean, we believe, and we're 99.99% sure that Mary Moore, Representative Mary Moore from the Birmingham area, was approached, did not take the deal, and then they moved on to Robinson. And so, and the point was not that we said Luther did anything wrong. This is John Rogers saying it. We didn't say it.
Right. And the point that what they were trying to get people to do with the Superfund pushback is to go and convince the residents not to let the EPA come in and even do the testing.
No, Jack, I think where Luther has a problem is this campaign's the contribution that he received.
That's
you know,
bad.
right after he sent a letter to the EPA, he received like $25,000 from Drummond. There's another several thousand, I think up to $75,000 he got, and some of it may have been outside the window of when he could have received the donation. We haven't looked at all the facts, but that's what we're hearing.
Well, if that's the case, then he's got some problems indeed. And I think he's got other problems too. I don't think there's a soul in Alabama that believes the appointment by Bentley was on the up and up. So,
And this letter you brought up, Brian Lyman pointed out when he talked to ADEM that ADEM made it very clear that they did not engage the Attorney General's office to get involved in this. The Attorney General's office inserted themselves into the situation. So there's a little bit of
And also, Billy Canary, the head of the Business Council of Alabama, Beth, he was out there with op-eds saying, oh, this is the Obama government overreach. I mean, the same old we always hear. But yet these people's homes, the ground underneath their homes was poisoned.
Right, I've heard that in some areas they had to take up entire layers of people's front yards because there were so many toxins in the ground from where, I mean, at one point in Birmingham, you couldn't see from Red Mountain across the city because there was so much smog in the air. And thankfully, the EPA and people came in and made that stuff stop. But what it all comes down to is that Drummond Coal and some others would be on the hook for the cleanup for places where they didn't conform to those emission standards. And they're trying to make sure it's cheaper to buy a legislator and to buy potentially an attorney general than it is to actually pay, what, the $30 million or something to clean it up and do right?
It was around $20 million. But Jack, I mean, we only got about 30 seconds. But, you know, the point of this thing, it wasn't fake news. It was reporting what this guy said. And was he lying to us then, or is he lying now?
yeah, I don't think you guys ever said Luther was in a room when a bribe was made. You're saying John Rogers said he was in a room where Luther was in the room and a bribe was offered.
He felt there was a bribe
You
offered,
know,
yeah.
that's John Rogers saying that, not y'all or us.
And
I
listen,
have no idea.
He is a long-standing representative, not known to be a crook or a liar. So
I think he's scared. I honestly think somebody got to him and really scared him. Now, I don't know who that was.
And again,
But
we're not saying Luther Strange did anything wrong.
No.
But listen, it is one of those things. Either he was lying then or he's lying now. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we won't.
It's one of those things, Susan. If something doesn't make sense, we follow the money.
Follow the money.
And
That's
reports
right.
are coming out now, so we'll see.
Yep. All right. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Our guest is Mo Brooks, congressman who wants to be your senator.
This is a breaking news update. I'm Jonathan Barbie with the voice of Alabama politics. Some are calling Thursday Bloody Thursday, and it was not a good day to work for Governor Kay Ivey. Ivey booted out 2 cabinet members and 3 personal staffers and apparently plans to accept the later resignation of a third cabinet member. Gone are Neil Morrison, the Director of Senior Services, Joanne Hale, the head of the Office of Information Technology, Eileen Jones, Ivy's Communications Director, Alex Rice, Ivy's Scheduling Director, and Will Edwards, Ivy's Director of Appointments. In addition, Art Faulkner, the Director of the Alabama Emergency Management Agency, told the Montgomery Advertiser that he told Ivy he'd like to resign on September 1st. Ivy apparently agreed. For all this and more news, visit alreporter.com. I'm Jonathan Barbie with this breaking news update for the Voice of Alabama Politics.
Welcome back to the V, the Voice of Alabama Politics. Our special guest today is Congressman Mo Brooks, who is running for the U.S. Senate. Congressman Brooks, welcome.
My pleasure. It's good to be here.
Great to have you. We have invited the top three candidates, which we are you, of course, and Senator Strange and Judge Moore. You are the first to appear, and hopefully we'll have time to have you back if you have time for us.
We've got 40 days left. Hope to make it.
It's a sprint, right?
It is.
It is. You had a very safe seat. You're very popular in the state of Alabama, but especially in your district. Why run for the Senate?
Well, first, I stay in the House if I don't go to the Senate.
Right.
But if I do go to the Senate, I want to change some things in the United States Senate. One of the things we have noticed as House members, and you can talk to any of our Alabama House members about this, and I think they'll confirm it, is we have worked hard in the House. We send bills over to the Senate, and they die. By way of example, during the last session of Congress, that 2-year period, we passed over 500 bills in the House. That's a lot of work that went to the Senate and never so much as got a Senate floor vote. So what I'm seeing in the United States Senate is our 52 Republican majority, for reasons that are unfathomable to me, have empowered the Democrat minority in the United States Senate, Chuck Schumer and 47 other Democrats, to block whatever we want to do, thereby thwarting the will of the majority of the Senate, thwarting the will of the majority of the House, thwarting the will of the President of the United States, and thwarting the will of all the voters who sent us to Washington, D.C. to get things done. So there's a lot of frustration out there with voters, and it's because our 52 Republicans have created a rule system that empowers the Democrats to prevent us, the majority, from reversing the kind of policies that have caused the kind of damage that the voters sent us to Washington, D.C. to fix.
Well, one of the things we've seen, at least here in Alabama, is that Governor Bentley, who is left in disgrace, appointed Luther Strange as a U.S. Senator, and he has got the big machine, the money, the power elites are behind him. And listen, Luther Strange is no hardcore conservative. I mean, he would be considered a moderate in the Freedom Caucus. Do you really think that they want a moderate up there? They don't want someone like you, do they?
I don't think that the leadership of the Senate, and I'm basing that on their conduct, wants a principled conservative in the United States Senate who in fact do what we promised to the voters we would do.
I mean, you have Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and a few others who are really standing, like you said, on principle that most Republicans would agree with. But yet over here, it seems like we've got, well, basically the elites that just go along and get along.
Well, it's the hand-in-glove relationship between politicians and special interest groups and their money. By way of example, I think all of us would agree that Donald Trump said on more than one occasion that he wants to go to Washington, D.C. to drain the swamp. I think what you're seeing in this special election for the United States Senate is that the swamp is fighting back.
Right.
And they don't want
Right.
me in the United States Senate, quite frankly, because I don't do what they tell me to do based on the contributions that they give to me. I'm going to do what I believe is in the best interest of our country. And if you agree, I welcome your contribution. But it's not going to be the other way around, where my actions are based on the contributions you give me, and that's the swamp that we need to drain.
Well, and I think by and large, that's what the Alabama conservatives want to see. They do want to see that. And I reckon by House members such as yourself and that are up there doing just that. You you have a reputation as being a solid conservative, especially along the lines of Jeff Sessions. And one of the things that we've seen is, with Senator Sessions out, our other senator is Richard Shelby. He's concentrated a lot on making sure that Alabama is taken care of, looking after Alabama's interests, while Senator Sessions looked at a lot of big picture items. He was very focused on national issues, not that he didn't care about Alabama. But how will you, as a senator, function? Will you look at the 67 counties in Alabama and say, what's best for them, what's best for the people of Alabama, or will you take on more of these national issues?
Prior to Jeff Sessions' resignation, and as an aside, I encouraged him to stay in the United States Senate because of how valuable he was to our country there.
Yeah.
He
Great
decided
senator.
the Attorney General position, he could do more good, so that's where he went. But we had a great tag team, 50 years of seniority. Now we're down to roughly 30, with Jeff Sessions having left. But with Richard Shelby, you had someone on the Appropriations Committee with his seniority that was able to make sure that, to the extent America needed something done, Alabama was in a position to help do it, which created jobs for our state.
Sure.
And so that was, to a very large degree, what Richard Shelby did. Occasionally, he would take a leadership role on issues of national importance. But the other side of that tag team was Jeff Sessions. He was not renowned for bringing home the bacon, so to speak, although he did that.
Yeah.
He was renowned for a leadership role on issues of national significance, whether it be trade agreements that are unfair to Americans, that cost us jobs, whether it be border security and the damage that illegal aliens do to family incomes, particularly families that are struggling to make ends meet, whether it be deficit and debt. And I'm more of a Jeff Sessions mold. I will do what I can to make sure that the money that the federal government is going to spend, say, on national defense or other things to get things done, that Alabama gets its share. But we need people in Washington right now who can save our country from the risk of a debilitating insolvency and bankruptcy. We need people in Washington right now who understand the threat of illegal aliens and the surge of illegal alien labor that is undercutting the ability of American families to make ends meet. And that's the kind of position that I've established in my 6+ years in the House of Representatives. And if the good people of the state of Alabama decide that they want a Jeff Sessions type person in the United States Senate, then I would submit that I'm the one with that track record that proves that that's exactly what I'll do.
You have a long history of public service. We were talking about it before the segment. And your opponent, Luther Strange, has a long history of being a lobbyist. And then Judge Moore, who's your other significant opponent, has a long conservative record as well. How do you differ from all those two other men?
There are two things I'm trying to emphasize. First and foremost, we have a special election right now because Governor Kay Ivey, in looking at the landscape, discerned that there was an ethical cloud over the appointment process that she wanted to remove.
Right.
And so she accelerated the election to August the 15th. Ethics is huge. If you elect people who aren't ethical, then you don't really know what you're going to get, and you may have the kind of troubles that Alabama's seen with some of our elected officials over the last half-decade or so. And so what I'm trying to do on the one hand is emphasize that with me, you get a candidate who has a proven, spotless, ethical record. I was raised by my parents to put country and state public service above my personal interests, and that's what I have done, and the voters can know that that's what I have done from my 30+ years of service as a prosecutor in Tuscaloosa, a prosecutor in Madison County, a county commissioner, a legislator, and a United States congressman. And over that period of time, not once has there been a complaint filed against me, that I'm aware of at least, with the Alabama Ethics Commission or any federal government ethics oversight agency. So that's the kind of ethical record that I offer. The second contrast point is, I've cast thousands upon thousands of votes, and you can look at them, and you can get an idea of how I'm going to operate in the future based on how I operated in the past. And that distinguishes me from all the other candidates in this race. Voters are probably accustomed to politicians telling voters what they want to hear, and then voters get frustrated when that politician, once elected, moves into that elected body and is inconsistent with his campaign promises. With Mo Brooks, the people of the state of Alabama can again look at my past and from that discern what I'm going to get or what they're going to get in the future, what I'm going to do in the future. And in that vein, I'm the only candidate running who has an across-the-board record of proven conservative leadership. And so I'm putting those two things out there, proven conservative leadership coupled with a spotless ethics record.
Well, we're going to let that be the last word for this segment. Thank you for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
And best of luck.
Well, that's in your hands. And your audience, I should add.
You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Our special guest today has been Congressman Mo Brooks. He's running for the U.S. Senate. Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Jack, last week, out of the blue, Governor Kay Ivey called up Jim Purdue, we understand, and said, Jim, thanks, but hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more. Why?
I don't know. Nobody can explain it. There's some theories out there that he might have gotten a little too close to one of her future political opponents. I mean, I happen to know that she doesn't take prisoners. Jim Purdue's a good guy. I mean, he was a private businessman. He was probate judge of Crenshaw County for a long time. And he's only been at mental health, what, 3 years?
2 years.
2 years,
Yeah.
He's a good guy. He's really, here was a guy who was trying to do something good with virtually no budget. And so I think that was a bad move on her part. I really do.
Susan, we heard from senators, lawmakers, just public officials who are like, what in the world was she thinking? This guy was very popular and by all accounts doing a great job.
He was doing a great job, and we fielded calls from numerous people, legislators and other people, friends of ours, that were just baffled by this decision. Nobody can really seem to figure out. I mean, Jim Purdue had taken mental health from what it was 2 years ago, which was basically non-existent.
Yeah.
And it was beginning to build it in. We're looking forward to doing the mental health with the prisons and all of that. And all of a sudden to change horses right now, that just doesn't make sense.
We heard there were some contracts that he didn't want to sign. We also heard that there was
I heard that
some pushback because he supported the autism bill. You know, we know BCA and Billy Canary has gone after folks for that. I mean, they've uninvited people who supported the autism bill. They've uninvited them to the BCA function down in Point Clear. If it were me, I'd go.
I would wear that as a badge of honor. I swear I would.
You know, Billy Canary's from the Bronx. I'd give him the Bronx cheer real good. Or Queens,
Send him home.
So you can take
You
that.
know, the sad part is that sheriffs have now become babysitters for the mentally ill.
Yeah.
People are ending up in jail that don't belong in jail. They belong in a facility, but guess what? We don't have any decent facilities to send them to.
That's right. Cardboard boxes, baby. That's what's coming next. Speaking of boxes, Kay Ivey is wanting, I think she wants her prisons. And Beth, I think she's going to get them using a constitutional maneuver that allows the prison authority to not appropriate, but to sign contracts to have these big mega prisons built, and then they're going to lease them back. And this looks like where she's heading after the Judge Myron Thompson ruling. It looks like they're going to go and just get some prisons, and it's all done.
Just go pick them up at Walmart, get them off the shelf, it'll be fine. I mean, I'm just looking at this. We absolutely have to have new prisons. I think everybody can agree on that. We have a prison crisis in the state like no other. But on the up and up is the only way to have this done. I mean, and if the state's going to appropriate the money to build these prisons, and then it's going to sell them to a private company and lease them back to the state.
No, it's the other way around. The state's going to enter into a contract.
We think.
We think, and they're going to, these companies will build a contract, build a prison, no cost to us, and then we just lease them from them, like it's an apartment.
Until we own them.
Right.
And
But-
this can be done with just the governor, or the prison commission, which is the governor, the
Christian
commissioner,
commissioner and
the finance director. The three of them can enter into this contract without the legislature.
And
That's the
Jack,
easy
this is
part.
so
just-
Alabamian because
Yeah, I have a question though. So if we have this leased prisons, and let's say that in true Alabama fashion, we default on a debt or two. What happens? Do we just, do the business just turn our prisoners loose?
Well, I
do they
guess so.
get evicted? What do we do?
But you know, I don't know the answer to that, but I think the bigger question is why isn't the Kay Ivey administration requesting to appeal that Myron Thompson ruling? Jack?
I think I have the answer.
Okay.
This will give them carte blanche to go do what y'all just described. This is going to be their way to say, well, we couldn't allow public input. We had the federal courts all over us. We had to do something. So we went to this method of this commission deciding who to hire and all. It's all so they can do this behind closed doors. And there is no public input and there is no transparency. That's the whole reason.
I mean, Susan, they over at Kay Ivey's office, according to the spokesperson Eileen Jones, they have an excellent lawyer.
And Boy Scout, I've heard.
Boy Scout,
But he hasn't so far recommended that they push back against the federal government and say, wait.
Wait, there's somebody in Alabama not pushing back against the federal government? Hold on.
Right. And we have not talked to an attorney, not one attorney that has not said, or a former judge that has said, hasn't questioned why they're not appealing it. If nothing else, to give them more time. But
to figure
here's
out
the
what
catch,
to do.
To figure out what to do. That'll get you too close to the next session.
Yep.
Regular session.
Think about, too, if these private businesses build these prisons, every dollar of state money has to be tracked. It's all an open checkbook. But if there's a private prison building it, then they can hire any consultants they want to hire.
Right. And watch who they hire.
Well, we won't have any way
Friends-
to know.
Well, no, but
There's no public
Well,
records there.
I mean, the
Right,
thing
it's private
is,
business.
it looks like, and of course, I think this is part of it. Kay Ivey's probably not going to run for governor. I mean, her campaign account is negative, like what is it, $700?
Well, she's $780,000 has that in campaign debt, and right now her balance in her account is $236.
So that doesn't sound like a person who's running. She can come out. She can make this deal on the prisons. And listen, it may be the only way to get it done, Jack, is to do it this way, because there seems to be no will.
no, there's, in the legislature, they can't decide because they're trying to decide which of their friends they want to give contracts to get richer than they already are off the state.
Well, that's what they kept trying to do over the last several prison bills.
I know. And the person I feel most sorry for in Alabama is Eileen Jones, because she has to, and I like her a lot, she has to come out there and explain things without making the administration look inept, and guess what? It ain't working.
Well, it's hard work. Somebody's got to do it, and it's a nasty job.
It is a nasty job, and I do like Eileen too, but God bless her heart for trying to have to explain some of these just idiotic things that get done over the governor's office.
There ain't enough scotch to make me want to be governor of Alabama.
There isn't enough duct tape to keep my head from exploding for what they do. All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us, because we watch them. Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Our special session and our special guest is Congressman Mo Brooks, who's running for the U.S. Senate. Thank you for sticking around.
My pleasure.
Beth Clayton, Democrat.
Hello.
Jack Campbell, Republican.
Jack, good to see you again.
I've known Mo a long time.
Yes.
Good man.
Don't tell all of our secrets.
No,
though.
I don't. We really don't have any, Mo, because you're so damn clean. But
That's one thing. We've looked at all these people, and we haven't ever found anything on you. That's for sure. Well, Jack, you had some thoughts on Mitch McConnell earlier. We were talking about.
yeah, I thought it was interesting how Mitch McConnell tried to, jump in this race and or certainly jump in the appointment process. And you were talking earlier about y'all send bills to the Senate and they die. the Senate has always sort of been inherently more liberal than the House. And so you certainly offer a counter to that. Would you entertain the thought of maybe supporting someone other than Mitch McConnell to be majority leader should that issue come up?
Well, I've not committed to how I would vote with respect to any majority leader.
Right.
But if there is a contest, I want someone who is principled and who will advocate what's in the best interest of our country in the face of some very significant challenges, whether it be deficit and debt, border security, the purported repeal of Obamacare, which so many of our colleagues pledged to do, but now have kind of backed off a little bit. I believe we need to keep our campaign promises, and we need to rise to the challenges that we face as a country. And if Mitch McConnell will do that, then I'm okay. But if we've got someone else who I feel will better do that, then that's the person I'll support.
We were all talking after the break, and you mentioned about the possibility of a Democrat actually standing a chance of winning. I mean, Beth, you're supporting Doug Jones, I hear, or at least you like him as a candidate.
I'm absolutely supporting Doug Jones. I think he would make a great congressman, because I think the thing is, we've got so many people on both sides of the aisle that aren't willing in either the Senate or the House to come together and say, how do we put aside partisan rhetoric and figure out what's actually best for the district? Because the truth is, in Alabama, there are Democrats, there are Republicans, there are people with tremendous wealth and people who live in abhorrent poverty, and we have to find a way to work together to represent all of these voices in a way that makes sense, and neither side has monopoly on being right. And Congressman, if you're elected, I'd hope that you'd take that value too of compromise and finding something that works for everybody. I know Doug Jones will, and that's why I'm supporting him.
Well, I don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, personally, I hope that Doug Jones doesn't get into the United States Senate. Of course, you would expect that, given from where I'm coming from. But I will agree with your initial comment. The Democrats do have a chance at winning this Senate race, and the Republicans better wake up to that reality. And I'll use just 2 data points. In 2012, one of our top 3 candidates for this Senate seat, in a year in which Mitt Romney carried the state of Alabama by roughly 23 percentage points, eked out a 4-point win.
Right.
That's one data point. And that's not polling data, that's election data, where you give a lot more weight to it. And then the other data point is we've had 5 different special elections in the United States this year of a federal government nature, open congressional seats. In those elections, 1 in Montana, 1 in Kansas, 2 in Georgia, and 1 in South Carolina, the Democrats have been outperforming historical averages by 7 to 8 points.
Right.
So you put +4 and take away 7 or 8, and all of a sudden the Democrats start out ahead. And we've got to take into account that this is not something that we Republicans can take for granted. We've got to earn the trust of the Alabama people, and we've got to turn out our vote in order to ensure that that trust, if earned, translates into an election victory in December. Otherwise, if the Democrats take it, it will be a huge victory for the Democrats, and they will use that to maximum effect if they can take a Senate seat in Ruby Red, Alabama, and the impact that will have on their candidate recruitment, the kinds of contributions that they will be giving, the enthusiasm of their volunteers versus ours that will be the exact opposite. So this is a huge race with national implications, and we better nominate somebody who can stand the kind of fire that's going to be coming at them.
Well, Beth, would take Nick Saban, I think, to make that.
I think it would, but I think for so many people in this state, it's not about what this means for candidate recruitment. It's not about what it means for fundraising or even what happens on the Hill for so many people in the state. I mean, for me personally, it's about keeping health care. For a lot of families, it's about affording higher education. It's about issues that actually hit home, and they're not looking at this about like, well, how can we better position our party for the future? They're looking at it as which candidate's going to do the best for me and my family. And I think that's the part where we're seeing Democrats resonate, is because you're looking at somebody like John Ossoff, who's not even talking about Trump and Russia. He's talking about health care. And that's what people want to hear about, I think, or not. They don't care what it means for the next election. They care what it means for them right there in their pocketbooks.
He's the only Democrat not talking about Russia and all that stuff. Let me say that. Could I shift gears for a second?
Sure.
Mo, you were there the day of the shooting, and you've been interviewed all over the country and all over the world about what happened that day. And I watched the other night, which was very heartening, the 4th of July celebration, I guess, on the mall in D.C. I saw Steny Hoyer there, and I saw, I wasn't there, but on television, saw Kevin McCarthy. What's the atmosphere like up there right now? Is it, I mean, I know that's a wake-up call to all of us that bad things still happen, but what's the mood like up there right now? And how's the congressman
What the
who was
public
shot?
probably does not understand in large part because perhaps we in Congress and the Senate aren't communicating as well as we should, or else the news media doesn't want to show it because it's not the kind of conflict that the media like, that in turn creates the kind of ratings that they want. But when we're not duking it out in committee, presenting the arguments for what we believe is best public policy or on the House or Senate floors, we get along fine with each other. We might go on congressional delegation trips together with our spouses on occasion, and we'll have a good social environment, and we'll rap with each other like you would with your next door neighbor. And the public doesn't see that aspect of our personalities. But having said that, I will say that prior to the congressional baseball game, on Wednesday was the shooting, Thursday was the congressional baseball game, there was a lot of get-together and rallying in a bipartisan way. But that bipartisanship, quite frankly, ended on the first pitch. The Democrats just slapped us 11-2. They gave us no quarter, okay?
Yeah.
Now, post-baseball, I think we're mutually concerned about each other's safety. We've had a pretty close to a record number of serious threats issued against the lives of congressmen and senators and their spouses and children.
Right.
We've had over 1,000 serious threats given to us so far this year versus 900 for all of last year. So the intensity of the threats, i.e. how much violence is being threatened, and the quantity of the threats has escalated significantly from 2016 to 2017. And we're all trying to cover each other's back, given none of us like to see the kind of shooting that happened on the baseball field. And unfortunately, with respect to Steve Scalise, he's on a roller coaster ride. He came in critical condition, almost dead. The doctors were able to save his life at that point, moved to serious, and then less of a threat down to fair condition. But unfortunately, he's now developing some kind of infection, and then moved him up to serious condition, intensive care unit. So our prayers and thoughts need to still be with him. It'll be another year or two before he's fully recovered if he's able to get past these downswings and get on an uplift.
Mm. The increase in violence, we see it all over the country. I mean, there are those of us who think that it's due to the moral breakdown of the family,
Well, that's a factor.
And it goes beyond. It's not about controlling guns. It's about giving people the tools they need to build lives. So one of the complaints we hear about the Republicans, at least from our Democrat friends, is that there's a lack of compassion. You know, there's a lack of, outreach for the poor, or this and that and the other. I mean, how do you address that when people say, we see the Democrats as compassionate and you guys not so much?
Well, what compassion is there in bankrupting the United States of America? It's one thing to say, yes, I want to give everything to everybody that they want. We'll let our kids and grandkids pay for it. Well, is that compassionate to our kids and grandkids? And I'm going to use by way of example Venezuela, but before I do that, let me emphasize, America is 100% certain to suffer a debilitating insolvency and bankruptcy if we continue on the financial path we're on. We've been warned to that effect by the Congressional Budget Office, by the Comptroller General of the United States of America, by the Government Accountability Office. And this is what happens if we go into an insolvency and bankruptcy. Where's the compassion there? If you look at what's happened in Venezuela over the past year, there are many examples, but I'll just focus on one.
Sure.
They've not been able to deliver food to their people. People have not been able to go to the grocery stores and buy food. And the result is, over the last year, roughly 75% of the Venezuelan population has suffered an average weight loss of 19 pounds. Think about that. 75% of their population cannot get the calories, the food necessary to sustain their body weight. That's what happens if there is an insolvency and bankruptcy. So it's one thing to be compassionate. It's more important to be compassionate long-term and short-term and understand that we have to live within our means. And that is a big clash point between those who are financially responsible in Washington and those who are not. And that's something we've got to work around. My compassion is for our country. And I want us to continue to be the greatest nation in world history. And that ends the moment we go into an insolvency and bankruptcy if we continue doing what we do in the name of compassion when in fact, long term, it's going to do great damage to millions of people.
I need to move to Venezuela.
I can stand to lose a few pounds.
17 pounds.
Well, you can do it voluntarily
That's
here.
what I mean.
In Venezuela, it's mandated.
It's unbelievable.
Well, and it's sad. I mean, and we do have the greatest country in the history of the world. I'd like to see it kept that way. One other question I have, if you don't mind. The Republican Party used to be the party of ideas. I mean, let's go back. Historically, we were the party of ideas, the big thinking, but we look to the past to go forward. That's how Republicans look. Do you think the Republican Party is still the party of ideas, or has it become the party of Twitter and the party of sloganeering? And do we think that's what the party's become?
Look, as Americans, we need to look at what has made us the greatest nation in world history. And we've probably held that lofty status for about 75 years. And you don't have to guess on what it is. Look at the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and the foundational principles that collectively have allowed us to excel as individuals. And as we excel as individuals, then we as a country excel. And so if we will stick to those foundational principles, I think we as a country will continue to do great. It's when we experiment with this nouveau liberal stuff that we often get in trouble, primarily because we don't have the money to pay for it. We have to live within our means. That's a foundational principle. Free enterprise versus socialism. Free enterprise has worked. Socialism is a nouveau idea that doesn't work and has not worked in any nation that has ever tried it if the definition of working is having enough money for a social net to help the impoverished on the one hand and an adequate national defense. In the history of our country, it's never worked if that's your definition. Yet we've got people in Washington who want to experiment with it and think that we can do it better than the people in Venezuela did it, who are now suffering such tremendous hardship and loss of life. So I'm one of those that says, look at history and learn from history, thereby not repeating the failures and mistakes of history.
And I don't want to beat this into the ground, but I guess I want to come back to the thought of ideas and principled ideas rather than this policy driven by agenda. Am I not being clear there? Because what I'm saying is we seem to go more for sloganeering these days than actual, like what you've talked about, principles. I mean, if we stuck to the founding principles as a nation, we wouldn't be in the trouble we're in right now.
Oh, absolutely.
But how do we I don't see us getting back there. I don't see it Republican or Democrat.
Remember, in our founding principles, half of our brothers and sisters counted as 3/5 of a person. So there has to be some kind of adaptation here that we can make things work and move forward. But I mean, like you said, we've got to find a way to take these principles and put them into a method that we can move them forward. Because you're saying the measure of our country is, having strong national defense and having basically a roof over everybody's head. I think we look at it as how we treat the least of these. That's what the Bible tells me when I read it. And so when we start looking at giving, $33 billion in handouts to 400 families in America so that we can defund Medicaid. Like, that's not. We've got to find ways, but we have to find ways to.
We're not giving away money. We're letting people keep more of the money that they have earned and all the jobs that they have created.
Okay.
But if you really want to help the least of these, let's have border security.
My point, though, Congressman,
are you for border security?
I believe we should have safe, legal ways to enter our country. Absolutely.
Okay.
But
now wait a
my
second.
point, Congressman, if I can please finish, may I please finish? Is that I think we have to find ways to make sure, in the greatest country on earth, that everybody gets a minimum level of care. Everybody gets a minimum amount of food in their bellies. And if we're taking seniors and our disabled people off health care, how are we doing that? How are we really going to be the greatest country in the world if we can't make sure that everybody has these basic needs met?
Beth, government is not designed to protect people from themselves. And that's what I think you're saying is.
Let me make a comment on this, and this is one of the biggest problems we have in America with what she just talked about. The biggest reason that Americans aren't making the kind of wages they used to be able to make is because we've had this huge surge in illegal alien labor on the one hand that has suppressed wages for those people who are lucky enough to get jobs in the blue-collar fields, and another huge surge of lawful immigration on the other hand that has suppressed the wages of the white-collar workforce. And I'm going to share with you all some data that I think every American needs to understand. From the year 2000 to the year 2014, and this is all federal government data, 14 years, in the age bracket 16 to 65, a pretty big age bracket, the American economy had a net gain of 5.6 million jobs. You know how many of those net jobs went to Americans, people who were born here and raised here, our kids and grandkids? minus 127,000. 5.7 million jobs went to people who are born in other countries. And if we didn't have this huge surge of illegal aliens on the one hand and lawful immigrants on the others, then perhaps Americans, through their own efforts, could earn the kind of money they need to take care of themselves and be self-sufficient and pay for their health care. What a novel idea to let people do it the old-fashioned way, rather than create another huge federal government bureaucracy and program that suppresses economic activity because now you have to pay for it by taking money from the job creators.
Right.
Well, Congressman, if I can just ask, will you sponsor legislation to remove the Statue of Liberty? Would that give me your tired report, your huddled masses stuff? Because if we're going to close, if we want to close down our border, let's go ahead and take down the Statue of Liberty and get rid of that.
I'm not talking about closing our border. I'm talking about looking at economic reality. And with economic reality, you have to look at how strong the economy is growing and how many we can afford to bring in without doing significant adverse damage to Americans who are already here.
Well, before this starts to become a love fest,
Hey, for the audience, we're smiling. We're having a good, vigorous debate, but we're not punching each other.
And both of you are just so smart and so good at this. I love it. We're just running out of time.
I understand.
I do want to thank you for being here. And listen, lively debates are the best kind of debates. I miss the old firing lines and some of those when William F. Buckley would go at it with folks. And so we want to thank you for joining us today.
Very much enjoyed.
All right.
Good luck, Mo.
Thank you. That's in y'all's hands. Now remember.
Thank you for a great discussion, Congressman.
Maybe we can get you in the Republican primary.
Well, not if y'all made
To
it where I
vote
can't
against
cross over
somebody
and
that
vote
needs-
now.
Yeah.
Oh, no, the first vote you can vote in. Then you have to vote in the Republican runoff. You can't cross over.
All right,
vote
I
in
might do that.
Okay.
We'll see.
All right. I can think of a few people who won't be getting her vote. You've been watching The V, the special session. Our guest has been Congressman Mo Brooks, who wants your vote for U.S. Senate. Thank you for watching.